Okay, thank you, Melissa and Dima. Welcome back, everyone, and meet with me again. So, yesterday we met with Mas Arya as keynote speaker, and today we have two superwomen. The first one is Mariatta Wijaya, and now Mariatta is already come with us. Hello, Mariatta.
Halo, apa kabarnya?
Oh, wow, baik baik. How are you now?
Good.
Okay, so Marietta is now in Canada. We have 14, I think, 14 hour different time.
Ya.
And what time is now? Yeah.
7 p.m. jam 7 malam.
Oh, okay, 7 p.m. Thank you very much for your time contributing back in Indonesia. We are very happy to have you now. Uh, Maybe I want to tell the participant about your profile. So she is one of the Python core developer. If you are wondering what is the Python core developer, it is a role for several people that maintaining Python core code. So she is maintainer of core Python's Snake GitHub code robot. What it is?
GitHub bots. GitHub bots is like our automation to improve our workflow in order for to help people to contribute to C Python easier. Um,
I see.
yeah.
So the automation thing, because you are also working in at a back-end engineer at Zapier is a service to automate web app, right?
Yeah.
And if we look at your repo, you have a lot of uh, automation and robot project. So
Yes.
you really like automating stuff.
Yeah. Don't do the boring things. Let the bots do it for you.
Okay, nice. So she also very active in Python community. Become co-organizer of Vancouver PyLadies and PyCascades conference. I think we don't have PyLadies yet in Indonesia. You may maybe you can have some word later for encourage our female participants more contributed.
For sure. Yeah, I think there is in fact well, I'm one of the administrator for the global PyLadies, so I know for sure there is an Indonesia PyLadies, but maybe it's not active. But
Yeah.
we have such a thing. Just I don't know who's involved though. Yeah.
Okay. She also received the Patent Software Foundation Community Service Award and have been nominated twice for the Google Open Source Peer Bonus Program. Wow, congratulations. Yeah,
Thank you.
and without more chit chat, I will welcome Marietta to present her presentation. So, Marietta, oops, I become an open source maintainer. Your, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Terima kasih sudah mengundang saya untuk hadir di PyCon Indonesia ini. Walaupun saya asalnya dari Indonesia, tapi sudah di Kanada selama 20 tahun dan sudah jarang berbicara pakai bahasa Indonesia. Makanya untuk keynote ini saya bakal menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Thank you so much Indonesia. Thank you for inviting me to participate here and giving keynote speech at PyCon Indonesia. So even though Indonesia is where I was from, but I've lived in Canada for the last 20 years and I don't speak a lot of Indonesian language too much now, so I'm giving this keynote in English. All right. So yes, I am a Python core developer. And if you're not sure what it really means, I do have a talk that is titled exactly that, like what is a Python core developer? So you can look that up on YouTube to get more details. And the short summary is this. It means that if you have a pull request to Python programming language, I can merge it. It means that I have the commit privilege to CPython. So yes, I am one of the maintainers of one of the most popular programming language. And for my contributions to Python and open source, I've received recognitions such as the PSF Community Service Award in 2018. I am also a PSF Fellow member this year, starting this year. And I've been nominated twice for Google Open Source Peer Bonus Award, and I've been featured on GitHub as one of the maintainers for GitHub sponsors program and the README project. But the thing is, I'm really new at this. I've really only started contributing to open source recently. My first ever contribution to open source was 2016, and that's only 4 years ago. It hasn't been forever. And since then, I've continued actively contributing to open source projects. And somehow I ended up with being given commit rights to other people's open source projects. And all of a sudden, I feel like I have a set of new responsibilities, and I wasn't fully prepared for all of this. So in this talk, I want to share my journey. How did I get here? I want to share what it's like as a brand new open source maintainer. I'll share some of the mistakes that I've made, some of the lessons I've learned along the way, and I'll share why I've continued in this path. What I hope by sharing this story, whether you're an aspiring open source contributor or whether you're an experienced maintainer, I just hope you could do it all much better than me. So how did this happen? A lot of people are asking me, like, how to get started contributing. They don't even know how to start. And people keep asking whether I have any tips or secrets to share. And I'm so glad to hear your enthusiasm into getting into open source. The thing is, for me, it really happened suddenly. Like one day I was just making my first ever pull request in 2016. By the end of the year, I got commit rights to two projects. First is for the Koala project in October 2016, and then the python.org website in early December 2016. And shortly after that, in early January, I received the commit right to CPython. And since then, I've kept this all up. And now I'm a member of various open source projects. But I think it's not about how I got here. The real question is why? How did I get started? What motivated me into starting to contribute to open source? Like if we've been, if you've been a long time user to Python, like why did all of a sudden I became inspired and wanna contribute and and give back to the community? So this story actually started in 2015. I attended PyCon in Montreal that year. It was my first ever PyCon conference ever. And I went to Guido van Rossum's keynote. Guido van Rossum is the creator of Python. In his keynote, he talked about how in the Python core team, there was no women at all. He had just attended Python Language Summit at PyCon. It was a room of 50 men, no women. And then he was offering to help mentor women into contributing to Python. When I heard this fact, I was shocked. Like, it didn't make sense. It just felt so wrong. But back then, I didn't do anything about it. At that time, I was feeling curious, like, how could this happen? But at that time, I didn't think it's my problem. Like, it's Python's problem, right? Not mine. So I didn't think that there is anything I could do about this. So a year later, I went back to PyCon, and I was kind of hoping to hear, like, who are the new women Python core developers? But instead, Guido went back on stage and admitted that there was still no women in the team. So he renewed his offer that he's willing to mentor even more women. And that's when it really hit me that there is a problem here, and it wasn't a technical problem. Like there is a barrier. There is a certain barrier in the open source community, in Python community, that for 20 years, all the core developers have all been men. There is diversity problem here. And if I have thought that it's not my problem before, this this time I realized for myself that this is a problem I care a lot about, and I wanted to do something about it. I didn't quite know what I could even do back then. Like I could just complain, like I could just, point fingers and say, Python, there is diversity problem in your community and you've got to fix it. But I didn't felt that's a productive thing. So I thought at that time, maybe I could give this a try and start contributing to Python and to open source. So I wrote an email to Guido van Rossum and asked for mentorship. I'll be honest, I was super nervous to write that email. I I had I had imposter syndrome, and I didn't think I deserved the help. So, but I felt lucky because Guido actually replied, and I asked for his advice. I told him I've never contributed to open source before, but he replied, and here are some of his early advice to me. First, he suggested that I should try to focus on modules, Python modules that I found interesting. And then the next steps is, check out the repository and the contributing guide. If I have if I had trouble following the guide or if the documentation was not clear, then I should just start by helping improving the documentation. Then he suggested, go check out the bug tracker and look at open issues. But, at that time there were like 4,000 open issues or something. So it was intimidating. And additionally, he suggested that I should try to introduce myself to the mailing list. And he meant the core mentorship mailing list, by the way, not Python dev. The thing is, even now, sending an email to any Python mailing list is scary. I don't know who else are reading my email, and it's a scary thought. So I understand if people are reluctant to write to mailing lists and decided to just lurk, and it's okay. But for me, I learned to get used to it and not think about being nervous. So finding modules that interest me. The thing is, initially I didn't find the project too interesting. I followed his advice. I subscribed to the bug tracker, but things there didn't make sense. Like I felt like there's nothing to contribute to. I didn't feel like I'll be able to help with anything at all. So I started to, think differently, think more broadly. If I couldn't contribute to Python, maybe I should just try contributing to some other project. So I thought maybe it's easier if it's a project where I have some familiarity, where instead of trying to learn an entire new code base, I could just make use of the existing skills that I already have. And that's when I shifted my attention to the Koala and the Python.org project. Specifically, the Python.org project. Python.org is a website that's where you go to download Python. It's an open source project and built with Django. Django is something that I was so familiar with. I was a Django developer back then. So when I checked out Python.org repository, unlike when I was looking at CPython codebase, like I felt at home. Like I feels like everything in the codebase makes more sense. So instead of feeling intimidated, I do felt like I can be valuable here and that I can contribute something to the project. And whether I'm contributing to CPython or any other project, the steps are the same. Like check out the repository, read the contributing guide, and if it doesn't exist, or it's not complete, not up to date, just go ahead and help improve the documentation. And so now that I found a project that I could contribute to, and in my mind I was all thinking about, okay, quick, let's find an issue that I can work on. I was looking through the issue tracker. But what I learned over time about this is that often I have to wait. Sometimes the thing that I the thing or the problem that I could help with hasn't been reported, or like the problem hasn't arisen. So instead of fixating on trying to create lots of pull requests right away, I ended up just reviewing the existing open issues. I reviewed the existing pull requests, and even if it's something that I wasn't familiar with, I would join in the discussion. I would be asking questions, and sometimes I would just help verifying like whether the pull request is good or whether this issue is still valid or not. Honestly, that was how I was given the commit right to the Koala project and to the python.org website. It wasn't because I made hundreds of pull requests to those projects, but it's because the other maintainers, they noticed my activity that goes beyond making code changes. I think they saw that I cared about the project just as much as they do, and decided that they could trust me and give me the commit privileges. Now, what about the advice about introducing myself to mailing list? This depends. Some projects actually, sometimes they would have a dedicated GitHub channel or Slack or Discord where there is a channel for new members to introduce themselves. So I would look into their contributing guide. If there is such channel, I do try to introduce myself. Additionally, what I also did is when I happened to attend conference, and I know that one of the project maintainers are in the same conference, I would try to find them and introduce myself and just let them know that I'm a new contributor to that project. And as I've gotten more active in open source, I realized that becoming a contributor to a project is just very much just like starting a new job as a new developer at a tech company. When you start at a new job, the first few weeks or maybe even months, you're probably going to be in onboarding and training sessions. Maybe there's a senior engineer assigned to mentor you, to give you a walkthrough of the code base and everything. And then after that, maybe they'll assign you a small task, and eventually you get more familiarized with the code base, and then you can start implementing big features on your own without help. Being a new contributor to an open source project is no different than that. It will take time for you to understand the code base and the workflow before you can make substantial feature or bug fix. The biggest difference is really there is no assigned mentor or to walk you through the code base. As I said, I was lucky to find a mentor, but even Guido, he had never given me a walkthrough of the CPython code base. It's something you have to do this on your own. And instead of spending a full time training to get instead of spending full time of work training to get familiarized with the project, you would be doing this in whatever free time you have available. So it will take time for you to learn the code base, and it will not be a day or two. If you remember, or if you're not aware, the CPython code base is almost 30 years old. It's definitely older than legacy code base in startups nowadays. And contributing is really more than simply find an issue and then make code changes. It's really about becoming part of the team. You gotta join those discussion forums. You gotta participate. I think you shouldn't just focus on only on the open issues and the code and then not caring about the rest of the community. So now let me tell you what happened the first time I became a maintainer of anything. All of a sudden, I found myself receiving tons and tons of emails because all of a sudden I got automatically added to all the repositories within the organization. Even now, I'm still trying to figure out how to better manage my emails. It's a little bit more manageable now. I've learned some tricks. I figured out how to better filter my emails. But every few days, I would just go to Gmail and look at the number of unread emails. And I was like, I'm just going to mark all of this as read. Like, I can't read them. By the way, I'm sorry if I miss your email. Please send it again. Anyway, as a contributor, often my involvement ends after I created a PR. Like whatever happened to the pull request, I didn't have to be too invested too much. Like whenever the maintainer have the time for it, whenever the maintainer decided whether they want to accept it or not, it's their problem now after I create a PR. As a maintainer, now I have to care, I have to make those decisions, whether to merge or not. And especially with a large project like CPython with large code user base, often we have to think about the long-term maintenance burden of the PR, of accepting the PR. And how this change will impact the rest of Python users. Just because one person wanted it and created a PR, it doesn't mean the rest of Python users need it or want it. And in addition to those, project maintainers have to deal with code of conduct issues within their project. They gotta moderate their communication channels, and it's not easy. This whole thing is totally emotionally draining. I don't think that open source maintainers have to deal with this. I think they got enough responsibilities, and I think the code of conduct committee should be separate entity than the maintainers. Because what if it's one of the maintainers who committed to violate the code of conduct. So, but often these responsibilities just falls on the maintainers by default, because maintainers are the one who have the power. Like they can block users, they can quickly delete inappropriate comments as they come. And on top of all of those responsibilities, I realized that one of the roles as a maintainer is to represent on behalf of the project, like becoming a spokesperson for the project. I realized that I'm no longer speaking or acting just for myself, but on behalf of the community. How I chose to act, how I choose to behave becomes a reflection of the community that I belong to, and I always have to keep those in mind. And I've made mistakes. I made mistakes. I was making big decisions on my own. And by big, I meant like I banned a user kind of big. When you ban someone, you're rejecting them from your community. Like you're denying their involvement. So banning is a serious punishment. This wasn't happening in the Python. It was in one of the smaller community I was in. I saw a person who made inappropriate pull requests, which I found totally disrespectful. And I didn't want to trouble the rest of the community and the maintainers having to continue interacting with this one person. So I went ahead and blocked the account without consulting anybody. The thing is, I realized that it was a kind of decision that I should not have done on my own. It should I should have followed, proper procedures, proper code of conduct procedures, or at least I should have let the other maintainers know about this issue so we can act as a group instead of just by myself. But the biggest mistake I made was really I wasn't managing my time wisely. Like I keep getting questions like how do I manage my time and my life? How do I have, work life and volunteer balance? I really don't know. My life is not well balanced. I didn't have my priorities in the right order. Few years ago, instead of attending my kids' school performance, I was in another country attending Python conference, and I regret it. And last year, instead of being with my family for Thanksgiving holiday, I was at yet another Python conference in another country, and my family didn't have Thanksgiving dinner that year, as I wasn't setting boundaries and rules for myself. I was giving too much time and energy to Python and open source. In the end, I burned out. I went through mental health issues. Couple years ago, I had to take like 1 month off from work, from everything, in order to recharge. Um, Despite all of that, despite of the troubles I've endured, I'm still here. I'm still actively contributing to open source, and I've continued saying yes to help maintaining open source projects. So why am I doing this? Why do I continue? Believe it or not, if I contributed too actively to a project to the point of being given commit right, it's really because I really do care. Working openly in open source is very unique. It's a very different environment than working in a for-profit company. I get exposed to unique challenges not normally faced at work. I get to learn about new libraries that are people are building. I get to know about what's new and coming in Python before everybody else. And I get to play with those and I get to use those learnings way faster than at work. Just as an example, in my workplace, we were still using Python 2. We upgraded recently this year in the year 2020. But in my open source projects, I've been using things like f-strings for years, which is f-strings is a feature in Python 3.6. And I've really gained a lot from the community. Not only that I'm continuously learning, I receive things like awards and recognitions, and those are valuable to me. I felt the responsible thing to do here is to continue giving back. Last year I attended Peter Wang's keynote at PyCon in Germany and he was talking about open source community, and he said, in open source, the more you give, the more you get back. And I found this just resonates with me a lot. Another reason why I'm continuing is that almost immediately when I first started, I found acceptance within the community. When I emailed Guido and asked for help, I didn't need to prove anything to him. I didn't have to go to like day-long on-site interview in order to become a Python core developer. When I requested financial aid in order to attend PyCon, all I needed to do was ask. I didn't need to write several pages of proposals over why I need financial aid. And somehow the community has accepted me. And for once in a long time, like I felt like I belong here. And that sense of belonging is super important to me. So that's my story. Now that you've learned about my journey, how I got here, I have a few more words of advice for all of you aspiring open source contributors and maintainers. First of all, when you were extended invitation to collaborate and maintain an open source project, ask what is their expectation of you and establish boundaries if there's any. Ask if there is anything you needed to do differently now that you have commit privilege. I found that many open source projects that I've joined, they all have really great contributing guide, which is a documentation aimed to help new contributors into contributing to the project. But they don't have maintenance guide. There is no new maintainer onboarding guide. And perhaps the thinking was that, if someone has contributed long enough to the project, maybe they know everything about it already, so there is no need to have maintenance guide. But maintaining a project is not the same as contributing. Like there are additional powers, additional responsibilities. So if the project doesn't yet have such a guide, I think you should start one and just start documenting as you learn, as you get onboarded. Projects should have succession plan in place, and perhaps there's unwritten expectation that maintainers will be around for a long time. I've really only been in open source for a few years, and in this short time, I've seen various maintainers come and go. Sometimes it's not even about maintainers who completely retired, but I'm talking about people who just need extended time off. Maybe they're starting a new family and want to focus on that. Maybe they're starting a new job, have a family emergency, or they got burnout and needed to take like extended time off from everything, which I did. And this happens, and it could happen suddenly anytime. There shouldn't be an aspect of the project that is owned by only one person. I know that open source projects come to conferences and they host sprints to help new contributors to contribute to their project. I think that's great, but I would also recommend, on top of that, doing an annual sprint for the maintainers and for the experienced contributors. For example, Python has an annual core developer sprints where we would have 1 week to focus on implementation and discussion and collaboration. And the difference is that we would be focusing on the project and less about mentoring someone new. And I work in remote companies, and I know a lot of other remote companies, they would have in-person all hands meeting at least once or twice a year. Of course, not during the pandemic, but even remote companies see value in having all their employees meet in person periodically. And I think your open source project should be no different. Even if you can't all physically meet, you can organize a virtual sprint and take a few days off from work and focus on your project. Most open source maintainers are actually volunteers. They do this for free, they don't get paid. Still, getting funding for the project wouldn't hurt. Maybe, there are infrastructure costs related to maintaining and running a project. Maybe you need funding for private GitHub repo or something like that, or you need to pay for web hosting, need a new computer, or you need to travel to host a sprint at the conference, or you want to take that week off from work so you could contribute to your project. Money makes all of these things happen. So even if you don't need those, money is a great reward for your contributions to open source. Your work provides value to people, and it'll be nice to get paid for it. So there are various options out there to help fund your open source project. So check out things like GitHub sponsors program. There is Tidelift and Patreon, and there is also Mozilla open source grant. So look into those. And above all, please take care of yourself. Your project is important, but it's no more than your own health and well-being. Remember what your priorities are and take the time off when you need it, and don't feel guilty about it. If you have the maintenance guide, if you have succession plan in place, I'm sure you'll feel at ease leaving your project to your co-maintainers while you take the time to recharge. Thank you so much, PyCon Indonesia. Thank you for listening to my talk and for having me. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me on Twitter as Mariatta. And if you do find value in my open source contributions, please consider sponsoring me on GitHub. Thank you so much.
Wow, very interesting. Uh, yeah, we have several questions here, and your presentation is awesome. Oh, sorry, I think it's echoing.
Oh, 1 second.
Test. Okay, it's okay now.
Is this
You
okay?
have, yeah, it's okay. You have several recognition now from Emma. Wow, you are doing all of this, and you are mom too. Awesome. And
Yes.
Irfan Putra. Ah, oh, Setia Budi. She is superwoman. Yeah, it's for you.
Thank
And
you.
Irfan Putra. Wow, as a mom too, that is so awesome. And so many people talk about you like that.
Oh, thank you so
So,
much. I appreciate it. It means a lot to hear. Thank you.
and about the PyLadies, that's my bad. Some participant uh, call with sorry, tell me about Galuh. Yeah, Galuh is one of the PyLadies in Indonesia.
Yep.
Galuh Sahid. Yeah, I forgot about her. I'm sorry, that's my bad.
No problem. Yeah.
And now we choose some of question. We have several now from Irfan Putra. Okay. Oops, sorry. It's a little bit lagging now. Irfan Putra, any tips on writing email even though having an imposter syndrome?
Yes. Um, I, what helped me is getting professional help. I I started seeing mental health therapist after I started contributing to open source, and I also realized that it's just in my head. I I don't think the people who I wrote email to, they don't see me as undeserving or anything. It's my own perception. So try to focus on on the positive thing and less about, oh, I can't do this. You know, you need help, ask. Don't be it's not a shame to ask for help. That's how you grow. That's how you learn, by getting help and ask and accept help.
Okay. So don't think too much too, right?
Yeah. Focus on the positive thing. Like, what is your real goal? You wanna get help, about about you wanna find a mentor. Go ask. Don't think about whether I deserve it or not.
Okay. So the next question from Zaki Ahmad. How do you manage time and set priorities between work? Because you said it's you have a burnout and something like that.
I I wasn't setting my time right in the beginning. I just do it. Now I started to I set some more barriers. I set some more boundaries. Like if it's the weekend, I'm not gonna read open source projects emails. That I cleared up my Saturdays and Sundays to spend time with my family. That's pretty much what I try to do. And in fact, I this year I started to say no to a lot of things. Uh, yeah, I don't know. As I said, my life is still not balanced.
Okay, we learn together by time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question. So this question is asked by several people, so I only saw it once from Fauzan and Doni. They said about how we can encourage more women to become software developer and contribute, because this is the problem in the same issue in Indonesia, and James from Malaysia also asked about it. They have some problem in Malaysia.
I think this is a problem everywhere, and I think it's not about women don't want to become software developers or they don't want they don't want to contribute, but there are other barriers. Like I know where I am here in North America, it is known that women are at disadvantage in the tech industry. Like we are not getting promoted as easily as men. There is that it's imbalance. Like we are not earning as much as men in the same field. And how can we justify trying to give free time when we still need to work harder in the paid work? So I think what the industry can better do is really look at this discrepancy and make sure work into more equality in other aspects, not just in the open source community. Like make sure you are hiring women, that you are promoting them and getting them paid equally. And when they're able to advance in their career, I'm sure they will have time or willingness to contribute. I like to see that done by industries, by people who have the power. Other things that we can do is sponsor and support women, offer mentorship. Additionally, there was one more thing that was in my mind, but now I forgot. Okay,
Okay,
I
okay,
forgot.
we
I'm
got it.
sorry.
So
I'm sure it will come to
to
me later.
summarize, we need the industry uh, to have a balance
Yeah.
between men and women, and we uh, for other people need to give a mentorship for other. I think it's not for only a woman, but the mentorship is for everyone, I think. And the follow-up question, Doni, tell us about. We know the solution is about having a role model for women. And in East Java, I think we have some of role model, and it's encouraged more for female contributor to do something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely having role model, having yourself represented was important. I can share that one of the reasons I started speaking at conferences is because I saw other women speaking at PyCon, like speakers like Nina in PyCon.
Hmm.
Seeing them on stage inspired me that maybe I can do this too. And it's the same for, for open source maintainers. If if we can make sure women are represented across the board, that will give, that will provide inspiration for other women to continue and to join the journey.
Okay, and Nina will join in the next session, and she already arrived in backstage too.
Awesome.
So, and the next question is from female Melissa. Do you have any tips for anyone who's really beginning, uh, like like she as a student, to not afraid to participate on open source?
Um, okay, that's an interesting question. Why are you afraid to participate? And I think I I I asked this. I have the same question to Guido van Rossum. Like I said, I'm afraid to write email to this mailing list, and he said, "What are you afraid of? He's not. People are not going to like. They're not going to do anything to you, anything bad to you. So why like there's nothing to
Everyone
be
will
afraid
not
of."
bullying.
No. I did learn to, if I'm afraid about, being bullied, about code of conduct, I do check. The first thing I look at if there is code of conduct and if it's being enforced. So that's up to the community, the maintainers to do that. But thankfully in Python community, I know that most projects do have code of conduct, and additionally the PSF, starting in, I think it's pretty recent, in the last few years they have started to enforce code of conduct within the community. So there's really nothing to be afraid about. You just have to do it. No one will try to, well, at least in my experience in Python community, no one will try to embarrass you for your contributions. So
Okay, very nice. And the next is from Chitra. It's a little bit technical. What kind of pattern you use to fix the issue?
okay,
So,
it depends. If it's a bug that I encountered myself, I would still go and open an issue, tell them here's a problem, this is what happened to me, and if I know how to fix it, I will say, and I will create a PR within the next couple days. So in some of the larger projects, and it depends. In some of the larger projects, sometimes the maintainers need to review the issue first before you can create a pull request, because sometimes they just think, okay, I know this is a problem, but I don't care, or like there are workarounds or something. Like they don't want, some of them don't want to take that maintenance burden. Depends on the project again. So I do recommend just check their contribution guide. I always start with issues first for sure before going to create pull request. But I do know that there are a few projects who just will tell you create the PR and then we'll review it. So it depends on the project.
okay, the next question. You said about diversity in Python and how diverse is the Python core developer from Song Ji. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong.
No problem. Since I joined, we have, I think so far we have like 6 women as core developers. So we are doing better, but I know we can do much better. Yeah, and we do have maintainers from places like Israel. We have maintainers from India, Korea. I think we have 1 or 2 in China or Japan. So I think the diversity is not just gender, and it's everything.
Hmm.
but we can do better for sure. But I think it's better than before.
Okay. And this is from Theodora. Did you spend more time as a contributor than in your previous job? I think it's before you contribute.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Did I
Uh,
spend more time? Did I spend more time as a contributor than in my previous job?
mm, I think uh, it asks about did you spend more time? Uh, okay, I also not sure, so I will skip it to other question.
Okay.
From Go Fendi, things are moving so fast. New tech come and go. How do you decide to follow or not follow?
It depends. I've I've been in tech long enough that I know what are the things I like or I care about and don't care about. There are some topics that I don't. I mean, it's yes, it's new, but I don't care. For example, there are a few PEPs being proposed right now that I just okay. It's not something I would use or not something I would not something I would use in my normal work. So I will not follow those too closely. Um, I think it depends on yourself what are your interests are.
Hmm. Okay, we have a limited time for now, and I think this is the last question from Puji Winarjahyo. How to consult quickly with other contributors for clarification, for example.
Okay. I can say for the Python, well, most of the Python communities that I know of, they really prefer you do it in their public forums, either in mailing lists or as open an issue in their GitHub repository. Those are better than privately asking questions to maintainers because a lot of time maintainers aren't the only one who can help you with that question. There are other contributors who could see that question and help. So I think don't try not to burden the maintainers. If it's something that the community can help with, ask within the community. So check if they have mailing list or Gitter or Discord instead of private communication. Unless it's something like very sensitive, of course.
Okay, I think back to this question from Felicia. Emma, clarify the question. Do you spend more time on being contributor than your main job? I think this is the real question.
No, I still do work full time, and contributing is something I do in outside, like after I'm done work, or if I do it during work time, then I will make it up. So no, I don't spend more time in open source and not at work.
So this is, I think, from on, Arpiandi, from your point of view, what's the best recognition from Python and community for you as the core contributor?
Oh, for me, I do appreciate when people wrote me message saying like just for example, couple days ago, someone wrote me a message saying they saw my GitHub bot tutorial and they used it and it's actually working. Just that little note means a lot to me. Um, yeah, that's me. It's
Okay.
like somebody has said before. Sometimes we do this without getting a lot of feedback. Like I create pull requests and that's it. But getting feedback that I did something good is has it helps, and that's what motivates me to continuing.
Very nice. And I think the times is up. We are very happy to have you here, almost an hour. And I think everyone also say thanks to you.
Thank you.
Very. So that's all for the first session from Mariatta. See you, Mariatta.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.